Sly Cooper, Half-Life, Titanfall, Bully, Mirror's Edge, and F-Zero all have something in common. They're all dead. A lot of great games have died over the years. More recently, you had the death of the Deus Ex series Down, the unexpected demise of LittleBigPlanet, along with the long silence from games like Infamous and Dishonored. But I'm here to talk about the many types of death in the gaming world, starting with complete death and quality death. Complete death happens when games vanish from the gaming landscape. You know, games like The Wolf Among Us, SSX Tricky, Red Faction, Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil, 20 years. Still waiting on that sequel. They are those great games that we used to play on our GameCubes, PS2s, and Xbox 360s. Old school gems like Mega Man, sleeper hits like Sleeping Dogs, our Splinter Cells, Banjo-Kazooie, Spores, and Billy Hatchers. Anyone remember Billy Hatcher? Just me? Alright. The reason for a game's death can range from a change in market trends, company decisions, advancements in technology, or you could just be Valve and have some of the best games known to man in your roster only to make sure they're never seen or heard from again. Unless you want to sell hardware, I guess.
Why you gotta play with my emotions like this, Valve? Huh? Don't appreciate it.
As it stands, all of these titles have been missing for years. No, Half-Life Alyx does not count, and back in my day, these bad boys were legendary. So why did they disappear? The short answer? Valve would rather play with their shiny new toys, yes, I'm looking at you two, than spend time with their own children. Typical deadbeat behavior. Then we have quality death. This is when a game series is technically still around, but you wish it wasn't. Imagine seeing the day where Far Cry is crying out for help, Ubisoft. An IP that has suffered a painful decline in quality. It really doesn't need much of an explanation. You know what I'm talking about. How Assassin's Creed died after Unity with its corpse getting violated with every new release. Silent Hill going from a pioneer in horror to horrifyingly mediocre. Every Halo after Halo Reach struggling to reach greatness again. Franchises that have lost so much of their own identity and all of their quality. But why? Why do great games die? How does something that was great meet its end? Well, 10 times out of 10 they die because corporate decided to take our favorite games out back and shoot them. This is what I like to call corporate death. Take Gravity Rush 2, the game that's on the screen right now. It was only one of the most creative games ever made. Wholly original, excellent soundtrack, groundbreaking gameplay, incredible art design, world building, stunning visuals, and what I loved the most was the part where Sony killed it with their own two money-stained hands, and then wondered why the franchise stopped moving. The original Gravity Rush released to critical acclaim on the PS Vita, yet Sony, the absolute brainiacs, decided to release the sequel exclusively on the newly released PS4, instead of the PS Vita where, you know, the entire install base was. Listen, the PS Vita wasn't exactly Sony's star child, so I could understand why they thought trying Gravity Rush on new hardware was the right move. Only, it wasn't. And to make matters worse, Sony barely marketed Gravity Rush 2. They left it to drown, which in turn killed the game's sales along with the franchise as a whole. I want you to imagine owning a food truck. Business is booming, people are flocking, they really love this new sandwich you're making. So the following week, you decide to relocate to the most hard to find location known to man. Damn, this is good. That's essentially what Sony did to Gravity Rush, sealing the IP's fate with their own actions. And truthfully, that's what happens to a lot of these games. They are the victims of corporate mismanagement, mistreatment, and short-sighted decisions. Instead of fostering growth, these companies kill creativity. A sad cycle that makes sure a lot of our beloved titles end up completely dead. Like Bloodborne, a cult classic. A game that is set in a world of perpetual night because you're trapped in an unending nightmare. Which is ironic considering the actual game may never see the light of day again. People have wanted a remake of this game ever since they realized that every other FromSoft game doesn't even come close to the mastery that is Bloodborne. What? Sue me, it's their best game. Bloodborne's director, Hidetaka Miyazaki, has shown interest in revitalizing this gem, but Sony has a complete lack of interest in doing anything with the IP, which isn't dissimilar to the dynamic between Gravity Rush's director and Sony, which isn't dissimilar to the dynamic between the directors of Days Gone and Sony. See a pattern? Days Gone wasn't a perfect game. It wasn't spectacular. Some parts of it weren't even that good. But A, no game is perfect, And B, it had a lot of potential, with interesting mechanics that most likely would have only taken a sequel to flourish, but is completely dead at this point, so its potential will be forever lost. A fate shared by LittleBigPlanet. A series of games like no other, one full of love, charm, community, and creativity. LittleBigPlanet inspired people. It was a platform, an outlet where you could express yourself, build whatever came to mind, collaborate, and share that with the rest of the world. It was the definition of creation. But that didn't matter, and so the plug was pulled, and LittleBigPlanet, with over 10 million user-generated levels, was lost forever. Now I do want to cut Sony, Media Molecule, and Sumo Digital some slack here. It's hard to sustain an online community, especially when said community is constantly being attacked and exploited. Damn, I was killing myself. To be honest, the series hit a rough patch and everyone, fans included, knew it was time to move on. Sackboy: A Big Adventure of course came out in 2020 and is an outstanding game, but it's not quite LittleBigPlanet, and we have no idea if a sequel is in the works. As it stands, LittleBigPlanet is a perfect example of how most great games slowly fade away and die. Only most great games don't die. Again, they're killed by the companies that own them. Konami knows exactly what I'm talking about. When in doubt, turn your IPs into pachinko machines, because Japan is addicted to gambling and burning money. Remember PT, the teaser for the upcoming Silent Hill title that could have been one of the greatest horror games ever made? Killed. Metal Gear, one of the most influential series in gaming history? Killed. Bomberman, my childhood? Killed. Castlevania, who would have thought? Killed. Contra was recently revived, but I guarantee it's gonna be killed again. I mean, we ought to be thankful Kojima got out before he got killed too. Konami's actions show that sometimes companies don't just kill a game. They dig up the corpse, violate it, grab some cash, and kill it again. Which leads me to Miyamoto, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who tarnishes his own titles with gimmicks and annoying control schemes, the source of Nintendo's best IPs and worst ideas. Nothing personal, Miyamoto, I promise. The man behind Star Fox Zero, which at the time was the first Star Fox game on a home console since 2005 Star Fox Assault, 11 years in the making, only to be released on a dying console that forced players to use needlessly complicated controls thanks to surprise, the Wii U gamepad, and shockingly, the game died on release. Because of this failure on the part of Nintendo, Star Fox is, for the time being, completely dead, in a shared casket with F-Zero, Earthbound, Kid Icarus, Rhythm Heaven, Nintendogs, Golden Sun, and so much more. In other news, the Olympics killed off the Mario and Sonic series to explore, wait for it, NFTs. Imagine dying to NFTs. Oh, what's the world coming to? Layoffs. That's what the world's coming to. Loads and loads of layoffs. Thanks to Microsoft, thousands of people have lost their jobs, leading to the death of promising titles like Hi-Fi Rush, last year's super stylish rhythm action game that seriously had the potential to be a genre-defining IP. The Evil Within, a neat survival horror series that was proving itself to be a standout in the genre, and Prey, one of my favorite games of all time. The audacity to buy out and acquire a bunch of talented studios just to close them down is some real nasty work. This means we have not just lost great games, but also the premature ideas of games that could have been great. A literal video game abortion. Sorry if that's a little too dark. My bad. We've seen layoffs from companies like EA, who shut down studios like Visceral Games, the creators of Dead Space, Maxis, the creators of damn near every Sims game, Danger Close, the people behind Medal of Honor, and Panda. Actually, just put up the meme of all the studios EA has killed. Thank you. Look, Activision Blizzard laid off employees despite record profits. They also laid off Prototype 12 years ago. Thought I'd forget? And Sony cut jobs in the Japan studio despite its role in some of their most beloved franchises. It's not just Microsoft playing the Grim Reaper here. Everyone is playing dress up, deciding what lives and what dies, which IP needs to be put in purgatory and which IP needs to be put under. And I can't say I'm surprised. Mainstream games aren't made with an original vision anymore. They're made in the hopes of creating buzz and making money. Those in charge don't care if a game is cherished, if its creators have a proven track record, helped create titles that elevated the brand. The reality is, If a game doesn't meet a company's absurd expectations, it's left to die. A rushed game is bad forever. A delayed game is eventually good, or something like that. Wise words from Miyamoto. He also has a quote where he talks about liking and subscribing this video. True story. Rushed death. Games that needed more time in the oven. Games that were pushed out too soon. Games that are released prematurely due to pressure from higher-ups, leading to a compromised final product. Direct your mind's eye to games like Cyberpunk 2077, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Xenogears, Anthem, Final Fantasy 15, pretty much every Sonic game, pretty much every modern Pokemon game, and Watch Dogs Legion. Because when isn't a Ubisoft title rushed? Games are rushed when studios, people in suits, want money, when those with power get a little too greedy, and we all know that the wages of sin are death. Watch Dogs, funnily enough, escaped its initial demise by putting everything into its sequel Watch Dogs 2, an excellent, polished, fun, open-world game that improved on the original in more ways than one. You could tell that the developers wanted to prove that Watch Dogs was more than just a game that lied about its graphics, and they succeeded. Only for Ubisoft to push out what could only be described as a hemorrhoid, Watch Dogs Legion, for you guessed it, some quick, easy cash. TLDR, Legion was awful, it killed the franchise for good, and any goodwill that Watch Dogs 2 managed to scrape together for the franchise was destroyed. Moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, the game that was never bad, just incomplete. A game that truly could have changed everything if given the right amount of time. Proof that crunch culture is just a bad microwave, always leaving parts of our games raw and uncooked. Uncooked like 2023's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, a massive game, just look at that file size, that was developed in under 2 years, where devs were practically forced to speedrun development, which in turn destroyed their morale along with, I'm sure, their will to live. The proof? That juicy 5-hour campaign priced at $70. What a joke. Good thing the game was released only to be laughed at. On behalf of gamers everywhere, we would rather look inside of a loaded 12 gauge, finger ever so slightly hovering over the trigger, than play this game. You see, you can't rush greatness, but you can certainly kill it. And you definitely can't milk it. What? Call of Duty has a game for every star in our galaxy. Telltale is a lesson on what not to do at the sausage party. You're not supposed to put them all in your mouth at once. And My Sims is my reason for reflecting on the meaninglessness of life. You know what? I think a few more spin-offs would have been the answer, EA. It's here that I proceed to talk about milked death. Cause don't we all love some milk? It turns out that an intellectual property can die when hooked up to a machine that drains its seed. Unless you're a sports game, those things have endless amounts of resources. When a franchise is milked, it means releasing games continuously without much innovation, leading to a decline in quality. The bigger the IP, the more it sells, the more it's milked. Simple. There's always a catch though, as quality death and milk death aren't so different. Think of them as cousins. The more you milk, the less you get. The more you pump, the closer that franchise gets to that sweet release of death. Get your mind out of the gutter. Although milking a franchise dry will always have its consequences. Just look at The Sims, used to sell those suffering from a midlife crisis and overpriced escape. Instead of getting games that evolve and enrich the Sims formula, games that offer fresh new experiences, you get enough expansions to make you wonder if EA's running a money laundering operation. By the way, my lawyers have asked me to let you guys know that that was a joke, alright? Okay? EA, don't come after me, alright? I'm already in debt, just graduated, thank you. So, can't afford a lawsuit, defamation, any of that, please. Again, the more it sells, the more it's milked. Remember the Tony Hawk series? Started off as a groundbreaking skateboarding game that defined an entire generation, to getting milked like a cow by those creeps over at Activision. They ripped Tony so hard to the point where Pro Skater 5 was bro, like, what is this, dude? What am I looking at? It took a remaster of the original games to remind us why we fell in love with the series in the first place. And that's what we long for. Those rare moments when we get a breath of fresh air. A reminder that it's possible to just milk it right, you know? However, these moments are few and far between. More often than not, we're left holding onto the hope that our favorite franchises will return to form, which makes me wonder, which game will be the last in a long lineage of titles? Will any of these IPs end up dead and buried just like the rest of them? Will we ever see a world without Pokemon and Assassin's Creed? A world without Call of Duty and Sonic the Hedgehog? Because if great games can die, then surely the bad ones can too. But let's face it, sometimes the bad gets to stick around while the good vanishes before our very eyes. It's a harsh reality, one that every gamer has to come to terms with, because no one wants their favorite games to die. Many of us hold out hope for a rebirth, a remake, a remaster, a chance for redemption, a chance for an IP to come out of that coma. But I think many of us know that the dream is lost for a lot of the titles we held dear. We know we gotta pull the plug, to discard our hope. Because this is it. Natural death. Nothing lasts forever. It could be that the people behind the games we love simply move on to different projects, to new horizons, or move on altogether. And it's up to us to accept that we might never get another Max Payne, Sunset Overdrive, or sequel to that one game you thought deserved more. A hidden gem with so much potential, it still lingers in your mind to this very day. Some of you might say, just play the games again. Or I own every console under the sun, and I emulate so hard I should be locked up. And while the ability to play a lot of these dead games, to revisit the classics we love is still alive and well, that's not the point. Psychonauts, Alan Wake, Doom. Try to imagine a world where we never got sequels to those games. It would have meant never getting new ideas, expanded stories with unexplored worlds, refreshed mechanics and refinements that build on what came before. When great games die, everything that could have been dies with them. That's the point. And you know what? Maybe that's okay. Because all good things have to come to an end.